Hello, happy Friday, everyone. It is Friday, August 24th. As I'm recording this, it's either Friday morning or afternoon, depending on where you live across the United States. I'm going to start out by talking just a little bit about Hurricane Lane here off the coast of Hawaii. I'm sure you've heard all about it, either from here or from the news or wherever. So Hurricane Lane has traveled from the east to the south of Hawaii and made a northward turn last night. Something like that, probably a little more like this. But so it's gone that way and is expected to keep going toward the Hawaiian Islands, but probably not quite like that. But it's probably going to do something like this and turn before it hits the Hawaiian Islands. And I'll show you that in a few minutes, a little better. But you can see hurricane on satellite imagery. Hurricane Lane doesn't really have an eye anymore, so we're kind of lacking the eye. The hurricane is weakening pretty quickly as it encounters some wind shear and even some of the topography of the islands, but it's mostly wind shear that it's encountering. You see a lot of this outflow here on satellite imagery, kind of looking. I'm not sure what the term I was trying to think of was, but anyway, you see all this outflow here, especially on the western side of the hurricane. You can't really see much underneath this. Anyway, so you see this. Here's a thicker. This right here. See. These are like whiter clouds. It's a area of thicker clouds. And if you see these individual cells right here, these are basically individual thunderstorms. You can almost see the overshooting tops of these thunderstorms. This isn't a rain band on the eastern side of Lane that is moving currently toward the Big Island of Hawaii, as well as Maui and all the islands east of Oahu at the current moment. So that's just current satellite image of Lane, and let me give you an indication of what it's going to be doing. So here is actually a radar image first, and center of Lane is kind of a little difficult to tell on the satellite image, but it's down here somewhere. And this is Honolulu right here, and the island of Oahu is right here. So you can see this rain band as we saw on satellite imagery, currently heading kind of east northeast toward all the islands east of from Maui on east to the Big Island. And I'm trying to figure out where this, like I can't remember exactly where this radar image is located out of, so I'm not 100% sure how much of it is being blocked by mountains or anything, because like I said, I don't know exactly where this is from, but a lot of this rainfall is probably more intense than it shows on this radar image, because a lot of the radar beam is probably blocked by topography, for example. So we're seeing that rain band move toward most of the Hawaiian Islands. Here's the official forecast from, I think earlier I've said the National Hurricane Center, but that's actually not completely true. It's actually the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, because they handle, the National Hurricane Center in Miami only handles hurricanes in the Atlantic and then the Eastern Pacific. This is considered the Central Pacific, so it's handled by the Central Pacific Hurricane Center. So our center of Lane is, as I said, pretty much due west of the south end of the Big Island here, and it made a turn up to the north last night, and it's expected to keep going north or even a little east and north before it turns back to the west sometime tomorrow on Saturday. So this Big Island is under tropical storm warning at the moment. Its hurricane warning has been discontinued. The islands from Oahu through the Big Island, so including Maui, Honolulu, are still under hurricane warnings, and then we still have a hurricane watch for Kauai and far western island, which the name escapes me at the moment. So Lane's going to make its closest approach to these islands in the central part of Hawaii, but it's still expected to turn away before it reaches those islands. So the main impacts will. Let me mention one more thing before I say that. This dark brown area is the current extent of hurricane force winds. This light yellowish area is current extent of tropical storm force winds. So the main impacts from Lane will probably be mostly from rainfall, landslides and mudslides, and waves, high waves, maybe a storm surge. But the strongest winds are actually expected to stay pretty much offshore. If you take this area of hurricane winds and move it up to here at the closest approach to the island, hurricane force winds may not even reach the Hawaiian Islands before Lane makes its turn. They'll still see fairly strong tropical storm winds as you take this big area of tropical storm winds, and it's going to extend pretty much over all those islands. As it moves north, assuming Lane keeps the same extent, which it may not as it continues to weaken, which I'll talk about here in a minute. So the winds won't be as big of an issue as well the high waves, the high surf, mudslides, landslides, especially in mountainous areas, and heavy rainfall as those rain bands move on shore. So, let's see. Let me show you the tracks first. So these are actually the forecast tracks from a whole bunch of different hurricane models, long-term models, mostly hurricane models. For those who know about some of the major models, there's a GFS and the European. You don't really see these on this particular map. This is actually, I'm trying to remember which one this was. So these are actually on. Okay, yeah. So these are a lot of the short-term models, hurricane models. Okay, so Hurricane Lane's right here, and the consensus track is for it to go north, turn west before it reaches the Hawaiian Islands, and then make it to the west. The Hawaiian Islands are right here. There. So even the consensus tracks pretty much don't take Lane that close to these central islands. Actually occurs a little earlier. Then you have some outliers, such as this one that makes this really weird loop and then come back over Hawaii. We pretty much disregard those outliers because it's not really sure what it's doing or what it's thinking. But essentially, as Lane continues to weaken with its wind shear as it moves north, it'll start being dominated by not only this ridge, a ridge that's to the east of Hawaii and expanding down the south, but it will also be dominated steering-wise by low-level trade winds, which are coming on northeast. So that'll start turning it more to the west before it gets to the Hawaiian Islands. So, show you. Now this is the ensemble members from GFS. So the GFS model, all the different members of its ensemble, which I talked a little bit about last time. So, what the ensemble is. So here's Hawaii right here. Center of Lane's recurrent down here, and this black is the average, and it takes the same path, curves it away before it reaches Hawaii. Actually, curves it away pretty soon here. Some of these do make an approach to the Hawaiian Islands, while some go a lot further south. In general, it's probably going to be maybe a little more north of this average, which is what the Central Pacific Hurricane Center is forecasting. But anyway, it gets dominated by these northeast trade winds as it continues to weaken under the wind shear, and then gets kind of steered away from the islands. So good news in terms of wind speed for the islands, but they're still going to get all that rain and high surf, high waves. So it's best to kind of stay inside and stay away from the mountainous areas if you're in Hawaii. And this is the intensity forecast from all those different hurricane models, and you see it's actually right now it's low level category 3, so it's weakened from it was actually category 5 later Tuesday night after I posted my last video. So it's weakened to low level category 3, and it's forecasted to continue to weaken significantly. Some models still have it up, but that's usual. Most models weaken it pretty quickly here as it continues to be impacted by that wind shear. So we're, in short, we're expecting, go back to this window. In short, we're expecting Hurricane Lane to, is that kind of move this way? It's right there right now. To continue a little bit before going off to the west as it continues to weaken, gets influenced by these trade winds, bringing heavy rainfall, high tides, high surf, and mudslides to mostly this area in yellow, but most of the hurricane force winds should stay offshore. And by the time it actually gets close to the islands, a lot of those hurricane force winds, it's possible as Lane gets closer to the islands and the central islands that it may even weaken enough to not even be a hurricane anymore, if you believe some of these models here that weaken it pretty rapidly, tropical storm force winds within the next 24 hours. All right, so that's all I'm going to talk about with Hurricane Lane right now. I will talk about the Atlantic in just a little bit. I'm going to first go to just talking generally about. Looks like I have to move my window here about the coming weather, the weather in the week ahead. I'm trying to do, you'll see these windows are smaller than in past videos. I'm trying to be able to show both of these at once, so I can talk about both at once. So we'll see how this works. So I'm not totally sure how it's going to work, but we will find out. So this is our current pattern as of late this morning. Have a ridge over Pacific, and then a trough coming into the northwest, which is bringing much cooler weather to the northwest as we were expecting. A little bit of ridge coming into the high plains, and then a little bit of a trough into the upper Midwest, and then a ridge coming back over New England. Is the general overall pattern across the continental United States at the moment. You see Hurricane Lane sitting out here by Hawaii as well, and this big upper trough. Very weak trough in the Pacific, and then a ridge, the Atlantic ridge, over east of the United States. And okay, so that's our current pattern and our current weather across the country at the same time. So I'm trying to do both these at once. So with this trough here in the northwest, we have a surface low here moving this way into Canada. It's pretty dry, not much coming. It mostly has turned all our offshore flow in northwest to onshore flow. So we have temperatures generally in the 60s to low 70s now with lots of clouds at the moment for the most part. Surface high along the east coast, so no weather happening along the east. Do have kind of a surface trough here coming into the southeast, so we have some rain and thunderstorms associated with that as well, and then areas of rain moving here into the western part of the Midwest as we have moisture coming northward with that. All right, So let's go a little forward in time. So let's look at tomorrow. So here's tomorrow, and same general overall upper air pattern trough still coming northwest, and this ridge building over the west. So if we look at the surface forecast for tomorrow, see this area of rain by Midwest has moving eastward into the basically Michigan, Indiana, Western Ohio area, the eastern part of the Midwest, I guess you can call it that. But our rain is generally decreasing in intensity. We're losing. Can't really see this low anymore. It's up here. Kind of see here over here in the upper air chart on the right. So we have this front here, but we're kind of losing some of this moisture source and some of the support with the upper trough, which is kind of moving to the north as the area of rain moves to the east. So on the surface trough coming here into the southeast, so we still have some rain and some thunderstorms associated with that. But New England's still pretty much still most part under the influence of the surface high, which is actually kind of located way out here in the Atlantic, but it dips down into the northeast. We have this, like I said, the surface trough and moving into the northwest again. It's another little short wave associated with it. So maybe some scattered rain showers in some spots, mostly mountainous areas associated with that as well. So kind of generally what's happening across the country tomorrow. And we'll go forward into Sunday now. Here's Sunday. So I'll go Sunday on both of these. And our upper level trough in the west starting to move a little bit further east. It's now kind of centered over the Rocky Mountains. And our surface low that was in the northern plains has moved way up here into Canada. We have another surface low developing here in northwest South Dakota. And then southeast of that, this big ridge starting to develop across the central and eastern part of the country, as I have mentioned before. And then another thing to look at is this Pacific high. So we have this big high pressure system that's pretty well established out to the west of the country, and that'll come into play starting more on Monday and Tuesday. So looking at the surface for Sunday, here's our surface low in northeast South Dakota. Some rains, northeast South Dakota, I think it's northwest South Dakota, I should say. We had some rain associated with that. Southern Canada, North Dakota, even some scattered rain showers in parts of the Midwest, and rain in New England is kind of associated with this surface trough coming up to this low that's way up here now. In the Northwest, we have this second shortwave coming through. Our upper level trough is a little bit further east, but with this shortwave coming in on the backside of it, could have a chance of some rain showers around, even in the low valleys west of Cascades, but nothing expected heavy, but we could see some rain showers on Sunday. So that would be a welcome sight, but it won't be very much. So not nearly enough to what we need in the Northwest. All right, fast forwarding now, or going forward, I should say, to Monday. So now on Monday, we have our upper level trough is moving further east into the northern plains now. Ridge still sitting over the southern and eastern United States. And this Pacific high starting to build a little bit back into the northwest as this trough departs off to the east. So on our surface chart, we have all this rain here in the northern plains associated with this trough. Our surface low has now moved a little bit further east, and so all this rain is back in the cooler air behind it. And then we still have all this kind of rain, unsettled area of rain. I'll go back one, yeah, in the mostly the upper Midwest into northern New England, and that's a lot of that again is associated with this low, which is way up here now, Hudson Bay, and the surface trough coming down. Not that far, but actually, yeah, not quite that far, but and then surface high out in the Atlantic starting to build into the southeast, but we still see some rain and thunderstorms mostly associated with this moisture coming in on the west side of the high, bringing moisture and probably air mass thunderstorms because of all this moisture that is being brought in from the Gulf. Otherwise, pretty dry over the country on Monday. So on Tuesday, when I'll start to see Tuesday, the Pacific high. Let me go back actually a frame or two before I do this. So watch the specific high on Monday here. So here's Monday. This orange area starts to build a little bit east towards the Pacific Northwest. Monday night even more, and then by Tuesday morning it starts to retreat a little bit, but we're still kind of under the influence of the Pacific high in the here in the Northwest on Tuesday. So fast forward to Tuesday on a surface chart on the left. So our flow is pretty much the same. We have this big ridge, the central eastern United States. Something that what we're watching here is this area. So we have an area of we have this low moving southeast down along the coast area of upper air energy up in Canada, and that's basically what's gonna keep the weather relatively cool in northwest. So basically on Monday, Tuesday we start having this Pacific high building into the northwest, but then it starts to retreat again as this low comes south, and I'll show you that more on Wednesday. But Monday and Tuesday are going to warm up again in the northwest into the 70s, 80s, possibly upper 80s even on Tuesday before we cool down again Wednesday. But elsewhere across the country, southeast, south is under the influence of that big ridge, so definitely warming temperatures. We have this Atlantic high, it's actually a very strong high. It kind of goes all the way there. So on the western side of the high, we have flow like this that's bringing this moisture, so a chance of thunderstorms, mostly afternoon thunderstorms with daytime heating in the eastern part of the country, mostly from the Ohio Valley southward to the Gulf of Mexico. Our surface low that we saw in South Dakota in days past, associated with this upper trough, it has now moved into Ontario, and our cold front associated with it is right here. So rain and thunderstorms, rain and maybe some thunderstorms behind it, coming to the upper Midwest into the central plain states on Tuesday, associated with that dry, basically in the whole entire western United States. There's not much is going on anymore. We're actually kind of under the influence of that ridge. Upper air pattern is kind of more like this, actually. So we're kind of more under the influence of that ridge on Tuesday. All right, let's go ahead to Wednesday now next week. And so this is Wednesday. And we have now this, here's our little low here. Not little, I guess it is a little low. Coming southeastward toward the northwest, and what that does is basically forces this high to retreat back to the west. So our upper air pattern is now more like this, starting to get a little bit of the trough in there. Our surface low that we've been watching move across country is now way over here in eastern Canada, and our ridge is still eastern southern United States, starting to build back to the southwest a little bit again, actually, by Wednesday. So we go to the surface chart for the same day, and we see our surface low up here in eastern Canada. Our cold front coming right here through New England into the lower Ohio Valley or upper Ohio Valley, I guess both, into the Ohio Valley. So rain and thunderstorms, rain and maybe some thunderstorms associated with that cold front. Here on Wednesday, some rain on the Gulf Coast in Florida with all that moisture coming on the west side of the high. Otherwise, pretty dry across the country, as not much else is going on. Starting to see some rain here develop move into our picture in western British Columbia, associated with this flow coming southeastward across the coast. All right. Then we'll move forward in time, and by this point, we're starting to get into even more uncertainty. So I won't show you too much here, detail-wise, but by Thursday, we have this upper low. The GFS wants to have this weak upper low kind of west of the Olympic Peninsula and Washington, with this ridge still sitting over the south, and actually kind of more zonal flow even across the whole country. So a little bit cooling into New England late next week, possibly as well with that. And as we go more into the future here, I'm just showing you the right side, the right image now. The left image I'm not showing you at the moment. So as we go more into the future, the GFS wants to develop more lows coming southward. It's now 10 days in the future, on the morning of September 3rd. GFS wants to develop another upper low moving into, this is actually a stronger upper low moving into the northeast, with this ridge moving back across the Midwest into the East Coast by early September. See if that happens, but that's still a long way off. And then, of course, it keeps developing these hurricanes in the Pacific as well. So this is now a long way off, and not looking at those details quite yet. So I won't even bother showing you the surface pattern for them. Let me show you a comparison, though, we'll look at how the European model on the left side now, I have the European model on the left side, and this GFS model that I just showed you on the right side, how they differ in time. So just to kind of show you the differences between two models side by side, you can kind of get an indication of how their little nuances differ in time. So this is actually the current pattern, and you see pretty much exact same across both. They both have this trough in Northwest, trough in Northern Plains, and they should. This is their initial conditions as of this morning. But you also see that there are some slight differences. The European, okay. I was going to show you something else, but I was going to show you something about hurricane lane, but it's a little difficult to see the differences on here. But there are very subtle differences, like here on the European, I'm going to use different colors so it's easier to see. Here in the European in northwest Mexico, have a couple a couple areas of lower pressure, lower heights. Here, the GFS only has one. The European here kind of has an upper air height pattern like that. The GFS is a little broader, not as sharp. GFS has this little cutoff that European doesn't quite. So there's just little subtle differences that you see in initial features, but those little subtle differences can mean big differences later on. So let's go forward in time a little bit. I'm not sure how far I'm going to go, but I'll go to let me go to 72 hours. So I'll go to Monday morning. We'll just see what the differences are by Monday morning. So both GFS and European have, still have this big ridge across the eastern and southern United States. So we're certain that's going to happen. Here's our upper level trough moving into the northern Rockies on both the European and GFS. European has a surface low here right around Lake of the Woods, little west of International Falls, while GFS has a surface low here in western South Dakota. So different placement of the surface low, even the position of the upper trough here on GFS, a little bit deeper part of the upper trough at least, kind of centered over glacier, northern Idaho. And European is a little bit, not very much, a little bit further east, a little bit weaker with us, just a little bit. And so that makes all the difference in the placement of this upper low part, of this surface low partly. So let's go forward in time from here. Now it's August, so there aren't a whole lot of interesting features, interesting things happening in August. So I try to find some things to talk about. So hopefully these aren't too boring, but I try to talk about something. So. All right, so here now this is this next Thursday morning. Now we still see the big upper ridge on both models, central and eastern United States, and the GFS this next low coming from the Gulf of Alaska, kind of moving southeast into the Pacific Northwest. Here's our surface low in GFS, and it kind of has this upper trough like that. European looks a little different here, and it has a surface low way. Has surface low in British Columbia. So does the GFS, I guess, but the European doesn't have another surface low out here. It's not as strong, quite as strong with this next upper low, but it's actually almost the same now that I look at it. But it doesn't have this strong surface low. It doesn't have the same type of support. But in general, the pattern is basically the same across the United States. But then you start getting outside the United States. For example, the GFS wants to have this really strong surface low here in the Bering Sea, while the European also has a strong surface low, but it's here like western Alaska and not quite so strong here over the Bering Sea. So, and it's in this surface low is this trough is pretty much tied to this big polar low, while on the GFS it's a separate upper low. It's kind of disconnected from the polar low up here. So it's those little subtle differences. And again, this is 144-hour forecast for next Thursday morning. So this is 6 days away, and the fact that they agree so much on the general pattern is really impressive, especially if you consider that just a couple of decades ago this wasn't the case at all, this far in advance. But you still see these differences which basically magnify the differences in the forecasting even further down the road. So as we go further here in time, I'm just going to go to 10 days away, 240-hour forecast on Monday, September 3rd morning, and look at the differences. So these are both valid at the same time, forecast. So they still, both of them still agree. There's this ridge sitting here across the central and eastern United States. They kind of differ on the strength and the placement of it. European wants to center it right over Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee. GFS wants to kind of elongate it a little bit more towards the central plains, but it's basically there. Both of them actually indicate a semi-strong surface low moving into southern Canada, which is interesting. But if you look at, for example, the northwest, the Pacific Northwest, the GFS has this fairly strong upper low moving into the northwest. The European doesn't. It's not there. We're under a little more of a ridge influence at 10 days. That's not to say the now has the strong upper low here in the Gulf of Alaska, which the GFS does not have. So the features are kind of just a little displaced, different in strength. So, but basically, these two models come up with different solutions to what's going to happen, and of course, then you get these big differences on hurricanes, for example, in the Pacific. But anyway, just to kind of give you an indication of how these models will, its differences will increase in time and become exaggerated in time as well. All right, so I have all these things on my screen now. Isn't that a pretty picture? All right. I'm going to show you really quickly the Storm Prediction Center forecast, and then I'll jump to the Atlantic Ocean, and that should be it for now. So this is Storm Prediction Center forecast of severe weather. So we're looking at chance of severe weather here in the plains. I actually meant to show you this while I was showing you the surface chart, but I forgot to do that. So, and then tomorrow, marginal risk of severe weather across the northern plains. This is mostly associated with the upper low that is moving northeast into Canada, along that trough associated with that, and another marginal risk, small marginal risk in northern Indiana, northern Ohio, southeast Michigan as well. And then day 3, we're looking at a slight risk from severe thunderstorms from the Storm Prediction Center, and mostly found across the Dakotas and into the Midwest. And again, these are associated with some of the surface features that I showed you earlier that I already put away, so I won't bother bringing them back up. All right, so I'm going to talk really briefly about the Atlantic Ocean because those are the tropical systems that affect the United States, and these are also the tropical systems that I'm going to talk a little bit about it because there are a couple signs that we may see some activity increasing, which we should in September. That's the peak of hurricane season, so we've had a lot of wind shear, a lot of a little bit cooler than normal temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean this year, so a lot of tropical waves in South Africa have had some trouble forming. But so this is GFS model of the Atlantic Ocean, and the first thing we're going to look at is this tropical wave sitting here southwest Alaska, Africa, and this is for tomorrow. So this particular forecast is for tomorrow, and so we're going to watch this wave here as it moves westward off of Africa in the coming days, week or two. So it's pretty. I keep going back between my annotations and selections so I can move them at. So it's kind of an elongated area of rain and thunderstorms according to the GFS model that it wants to forecast until it starts getting its act together. We might be able to start getting a low consolidating here a little more by this is long into the future, and though this is already next weekend. This is over a week away, and then another circulation, another tropical wave coming off here, and these are tending to die. I mean, they're not even becoming tropical systems because they don't have the support to be able to become organized. But as we go into September, GFS wants to say that conditions might start becoming a little more conducive for organization of some small tropical, at least some weak tropical features. I haven't looked exactly what the wind shear and the temperatures are going to be looking like, and then this is actually at 16 days, and the GFS has a tropical storm or a hurricane here in the Central Atlantic, a weak low here moving into the Antilles. So again, this is 2 weeks ahead of time, very early. There's no way to tell exactly what's gonna form, where it's gonna form, how strong it's gonna be, or anything like that, when it's gonna form. But overall, the GFS is starting to indicate we might see a relaxing of wind shear, maybe some warming temperatures. So September is the month where we start seeing the warmest temperatures here in the Atlantic Ocean. So hopefully, not hopefully, but if it lines up with what we expect, climatological wise, we'll start seeing these warmer temperatures, less wind shear. The wind shear will start to relax, and we might start seeing some tropical systems starting to form and be able to maintain themselves across the Atlantic, and we'll also see what happens to them if that happens. But we'll probably see at least one or two. This is we see them every year, so it's starting to get into the peak of hurricane season, and it seems like one of those years where we're going to see some leader storms. Probably still less than normal, but it only takes one strong one. So look at Hurricane Andrew in '92. It was the first named storm of the season, and it happened in late August, and so it got us to a late start, but Hurricane Andrew was one of the strongest hurricanes on record, so only takes one. But we will see what happens. Right now, no way of knowing, but conditions probably becoming more conducive. All right, so that's all I have right now, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.